You could do this for a million years. There's a lot of interesting individuals in this town.
Showcasing local talent, professionals, and everyday people making Salt Lake City what it is today. It's time for another episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast.
As always, recording out of beautiful downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. Welcome to the I Am Salt Lake podcast, episode 79. My name is Chris Hollifield. I am the host. Welcome to my show. Welcome to the podcast where I showcase locals, professionals, individuals, just everyday people that I believe are making a difference here in Salt Lake City, making the city just a little bit better to live in. So thank you for joining me, especially to my first-time listeners. Thank you for tuning in and listening. IamSaltLake.com is the website. You can go there and find out more about the podcast. You can listen to all the previous episodes right there online. I got all the contact information right there as well. Cannot urge you enough to drop me an email, call me up on the voicemail, tell me what you think of the show. This episode, I sat down with Bryan Young. He is the founder and editor-in-chief of the geek news and review site, Big Shiny Robot. He also helps host the Big Shiny Geek Show pub quiz down at Lucky 13 on Wednesday nights. He is an author. He is a film producer. He's published comic books, as well as a contributor for the Huffington Post, StarWars.com, and my favorite, he is one of the hosts on the Full of Sith podcast with Mike Pilot and Concetta Parker. Really great podcast that I cannot urge you enough to check out. So he is on today's episode. I'm going to jump into that conversation that I had with him now. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast. Well, why don't we just kind of start at the beginning? You introduce yourself, a little bit about yourself. I know you are involved with a lot of projects as well. So why don't you just kind of start there, kind of what you're involved with and who you are?
My name's Bryan Young. I do a lot of different projects. People in Salt Lake might know me from my column in City Weekly, which is every week or two. It's geek stuff. I spent a lot of time filming the Geek Show for Comcast for a long time, film and produce Jeff Michael Weiss's and Jimmy Martin's movie review show, The Big Movie Mouth Off. And on top of that kind of stuff, you know, I'm an author and a writer. I write about politics and comic books for Huffington Post, and I run the geek news website Big Shiny Robot, and I write for the official Star Wars website, and I do a Star Wars podcast, and there's probably about 1,000 other things I do that I've totally spaced. And
the Star Wars podcast you speak of is Full of Sith, right?
Yeah, Full of Sith.
Great podcast. And I want to get into that here in just a second. But so you do a lot of writing. I mean, that's kind of your main thing as well as with films. At what age did you get into writing? Like how young were you when you got an interest in writing?
The first time was, I remember distinctly in the 5th grade, I won an award for creative writing in like the Scholastic Olympics in my elementary school. And I won like a silver medal. And that kind of got me thinking about like, writing is something I could do. And then it was a teacher in 8th grade in creative writing that really kind of kicked things into gear. And she taught creative writing and journalism classes.
Yeah.
And so I really got into both of those aspects of it, and through the teaching she did, I sold a short story to a magazine that's thankfully like lost to the sands of time because it was terrible. But
in 5th grade,
this was my junior year in high school.
Okay.
So in 5th grade, I won an award. In 8th grade, I started getting into creative writing. By my junior year of high school, I'd sold my first short story. It was terrible. It was about a group of mutant animals going back in time to kill Hitler.
But the fact that you sold it probably still was an awesome thing.
Yeah, no, it was an awesome thing. And I'm grateful that the magazine went under and no one can find a copy of it. And I don't even have a copy of it.
You don't even have a...
No.
So did you continue on like college at all with writing?
No, I was in love with film, and I was going to go to film school, and I went to check out the Art Academy in San Francisco, and went there, and stuff didn't work out. And, everybody I was working with in the film industry around here said, you don't need to go to film school, just make your own movie and work on our sets. So I started working on a lot of movies locally and spent the money I'd saved up to move to San Francisco and built a spaceship in my mom's backyard with it. And we shot a film inside the spaceship in my mom's backyard. We,
and did anything happen with this film? I mean, did you, or was it just kind of a home?
It was, we got it actually, we got it into the semifinals of the No Dance Film Festival back when there was like 100 different dance festivals in Park City. So we had an hour-long time slot and a 70-minute movie. So we played 62 minutes of it up at Park City, and nothing came of it. I mean, we sold probably a couple of 100 copies total. Yeah. And I think it's on YouTube now. I can direct people to it, but it's terrible. It's terrible. It was such a learning experience, though. But
okay, so what films have you done that are notable or that are worth checking out? I think you have one on Netflix, don't you?
Two actually on Netflix. After that film and a couple of other films, in 2004, Michael Moore was coming to,
I remember that,
Utah Valley State College, which is what it was called then. And myself and Steve Greenstreet and a whole bunch of other people just started filming the reaction to that. And that turned into a film that I ended up assistant directing and producing, and called This Divided State.
And that's on Netflix now.
You can check that out on Netflix, yeah. And so that's about there was bribery and death threats and just people melting down that Michael Moore was coming to the most conservative county in the country 2 weeks before the election in 2004.
Not only the most conservative state, but the consertive county.
Yeah, no. Utah County voted for George Bush at a higher percentage than any other county in any other county in the country.
Yeah.
In 2000 and 2004.
And what's the other film that?
The other one is a political expose that after This Divided State came out, we had a doctor come to us and say, I'd like to finance sort of a political essay film about the politics of obesity in America.
Okay.
And it's called Killer at Large. And it's about how our food system is manipulated by industry and how government is sort of, the food choices we make every day aren't necessarily our own as much as we'd like to think they are.
That must have been kind of interesting to research and find out and do.
It was. We spent 3 years on that movie.
Really?
And I dropped 65 pounds making that movie just
wow.
by cutting stuff out.
It is kind of scary to think what's in our food and the fact that we eat it. And I mean, we put more care and love into our automobiles than ourselves, It's let's put top grade gasoline in our car, but shitty food in us,
Yeah. We were talking to Michael Pollan in the film, and plenty of people know him. He wrote the Omnivore's Dilemma and stuff. And he said that, he was curious at what point in our history or culture did we decide that cheap was the most important thing for food as opposed to tasting good? And that really kind of changed my mind on things. I would rather pay more for better tasting
quality food. Yeah.
Which isn't something a lot of people think about. It's just I can get 10 of those for $1. They're on sale. Let's go.
Yeah.
Regardless of the quality.
So are those your two films that you've done
that are on Netflix?
What are any others that people can get? Or
there's a couple of them on YouTube, but again, those are the two best films I've worked on. But there's some on YouTube that will never see the light of day in distribution for a variety of reasons. One of them was about our antics promoting a friend's film up at Sundance. We impostered Comedy Central television crews and did all kinds of untoward things at the festival, and that's called The Misbehaviors, and I think that's public on YouTube. If not, people can hit me up and I'll send them a link. And then there's Missy, which is the name of the spaceship we built, and that is on YouTube. And there's another one called The Flea Pit 3, which kind of grew out of this. There was this group of filmmakers, and we would get together every Saturday and we'd make a short film. Mm-hmm. And after 6 months of making short films every weekend, we're like, we should make a feature this way. And so we made a feature film over the course of 6 months of weekends in a movie theater in Orem. And it was kind of funny. It was kind of like Clerks, but with a robbery involved, set at a movie theater. And it was called The Flea Pit 3. And, still constantly tinkering on film stuff.
Yeah. Well, let's back up actually a little bit. We talked about your writing. You have how many published books do you have? We didn't talk about that yet.
I've got 2 novels and 2 collections of stories that are just mine. The first novel that I published was called Lost at the Con,
which I need to get that and read it. I've heard it's a great read.
I'll get you a copy. I can hook you up with that. And it's about a drunken political journalist forced to cover a convention against his will, like a geek, like sci-fi convention.
Yeah.
And it's sort of the Huffington Post, when they reviewed it, called it Fear and Loathing at Dragon Con, which kind of gives you an idea of what it was. It's very Hunter S. Thompson-y.
And I know you can find the books on Amazon. I mean,
they're on Amazon. Can
you find them like at any local bookstores by chance here in Salt Lake?
I know Eborn Books on Main Street stocks them. King's English has stocked them in and out. Most of the comic book stores actually have them. I know Dr. Volts carries them pretty actively.
Okay.
So yeah, they're around to get.
Yeah, so if people listening either online or, I mean, do you have your website?
Yeah.
I mean, probably can order them right from Big Shiny Robot?
No, I've got an author website called BryanYoungFiction.com.
Okay.
And there's a shop there, and people can get signed copies from me through there.
And I mean, you're constantly working on new books, writing.
Yeah.
Didn't you just go to Paris to work on a book or something like that? What's the story behind that? What was that all about?
I did really well book sales wise in December, and Patty, the girlfriend, she was going for school to Paris, so she had a place to stay, and I'd sold a whole bunch of books and had enough money for a plane ticket and said, screw it, I'm going to go out there. And
every author's dream.
Yeah.
Right?
And I spent 3 weeks out there, every morning writing, every afternoon and evening sightseeing and drinking more than I should have. Was
that your first time in Paris?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, what's it? I mean, I've never been, obviously. Was it just everything that you imagined, or what?
Pieces of it were. You know, you go there and you think like, wow, Hemingway and Fitzgerald and these guys, they came here because it was this, beautiful, amazing bastion of culture and arts, and it was that. But they went there because it was dirt cheap. Mm-hmm. When they were there, they could sell a story to a magazine or a newspaper in the States and then live off of that one sale for a month or two. And now in Paris, that's just not the case. It's so impossible to afford, to simulate that experience now. You'd have to go to like Rio de Janeiro or something, or some South American, country where you could match the exchange rate like that.
Yeah. Were you more inspired there to write?
Oh, totally.
Versus here?
No, I mean, I think it's like a mental affliction where I kind of have to write no matter what.
Okay.
But part of it was just not having to do the day-to-day work stuff. And part of it was that place just soaks, like it just exudes creativity, and you just soak it in all the time. That I wrote a lot out there, a lot more than you'd expect, on vacation, where you're not going to want to sit in your hotel room tapping away on your computer or writing in your notebook. But I wrote a couple of short stories while I was out there. I wrote, 20,000 words of a novel, and I probably put 30 or 40,000 words by hand down in my notebook, just checking out various things and sitting in cafes all over the place.
But you were kind of bummed to come back to Salt Lake here.
I went to a convention to teach some writing seminars just a week ago, and I was in the airport and saw the like Euro money exchange, and I was just like, oh, I wish I had a reason to exchange my money and leave again. It was like a bittersweet kind of thing seeing that.
Well, you're traveling a lot anyways. I mean, you're always going to different conventions and whatnot. So you're always on the road traveling anyway. So I'm sure that even helps inspiration with writing. Do you ever get like a writer's block then or at all or no?
No. I think Brian K. Vaughan said it best when he said that writer's block's just another name for video games.
I like that.
I'm always working on a couple of different projects, and I've always got deadlines on different projects. So if I'm ever not writing, like I must have been abducted by a pod person or something and replaced, because I've got too much to write and too much of my own stuff to write. And the more I write for other people, the more forceful I am about writing for myself.
Are you kind of the typical writer, or not typical, but the writer that uses a typewriter, or are you more just a laptop kind of guy?
It depends, actually. The first novel I wrote was on a typewriter. I've written a bunch of short stories on my typewriter. I like working in my notebook by hand. I've got a Moleskine that I've got a whole shelf of moleskins I've filled up over the years. My computer works for stuff. I mean, eventually everything makes it onto the computer, but sometimes if I feel like I'm getting stuck on the computer, I'll switch to my notebook or pull out the typewriter or whatever.
I've always just been curious, what it is about that old-fashioned typewriter that writers like about it. Just is it just because you're not distracted with, like, say, the internet?
Yeah, no, part of it's that the internet's not on it. Part of it's the sound. I think there's something satisfying about clicking the keys, hearing them, seeing it come out on the page, being able to take the page out and put it on a stack and see that stack grow as you're working on stuff. Part of the reason I really like working on a typewriter is a lot of the writers that I admire and really loved over the years, when they write about their writing process, typewriters are always involved. I've never smoked a cigarette in my life, but because of Kurt Vonnegut so frequently describing sitting down at his typewriter with a pack of Pall Malls, like when I'm sitting at my typewriter, I feel compelled to smoke because of it. I mean, I don't, but
you should try it. It might help inspire you.
It could.
So who are some of your favorite authors? And you mentioned Vonnegut.
Vonnegut obviously is up there. I really adore like guys like Hemingway and Steinbeck, which is totally like the cliche, like, oh, this guy, everybody expects me to love like sci-fi authors, and I do. Like, I really love like Robert Heinlein and stuff and guys like that. But Graham Greene is another one I really dig. It seems as though people are like forgetting him, but he was like this really important English novelist from like the 30s to the 80s. And, he wrote lots of books that were turned into movies that everybody's heard of. Like he wrote The Third Man that Orson Welles was in. He wrote The End of the Affair, which they did a couple of different versions. The most recent was Ralph Fiennes and Julianne Moore. Yeah. The Quiet American, which the most recent version had Michael Caine in it. And his stuff's just it's really cinematic in novel form. And I really dig it. And all of his novels are really short.
Would you like to see one of your books turn into a big Hollywood movie ever?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, why not, I guess?
Absolutely.
I mean, the paycheck would be nice, I'm sure.
The paycheck would be nice. I really love watching my words turn into film and video. Like, I love that. The last book I published, called Operation Montauk, it's a total sci-fi pulp adventure like I'd imagine Steven Spielberg would do someday. It's like World War II soldier sent back in time to kill Hitler, but finds himself 65 million years in the past instead. Finds an entire community of time travelers there from different eras. They're all trying to figure out why they're there, how to get home, how to survive against the dinosaurs, and then the Nazis show up.
That'd be a great movie.
Yeah, no, and it's all the stuff I loved seeing in movies, and I put it in a book, and hopefully I think part of the reason I actually switched to writing books more than screenplays, because I used to write almost exclusively in screenplay, is because it was so hard to get a screenplay produced. I went through the whole agency and showing it to producers and directors process and kind of didn't connect with making a sale the way I think I could have or should have. And I've got this trunk full of screenplays that it's going to take a while to see the light of day, because I'm going to have to go back and figure out a way for them to see the light of day. Instead, I can write a novel, and it's so much more immediate and finished after the writing process, as opposed to just beginning after the writing process. And I can show it to people and get it out there and have people see it. I think at my core, like when people ask me what I do, I'm a storyteller, and it almost doesn't matter the medium. I think one thing storytellers thrive on, whether they'll admit it or not, is like having people hear the stories, or see them or read them or whatever. And so switching to novels as opposed to screenwriting,
you get a lot more people interested to read it, obviously.
Well, I think I'd get more people to watch the movies, but it's much less expensive to put out a book than a movie.
Yeah. With all the writing, do you have much time to read?
I do. I read a lot, actually. I read quite a bit.
What about audiobooks? Or do you get into like listening to audiobooks? Isn't one of your books on Audible?
Lost at the Con is on Audible, so you can listen to me do that.
Do you read it?
I did the reading on it. Yeah.
Wow.
And then I've got a collection of short stories that Marcus, the comedian from Last Comic Standing, who's local around here, he read all the short stories.
Really?
And that's going to be out soon.
In an audio? On Audible? Or,
it'll be on Audible.
Really?
And No, I don't listen to a lot of audiobooks or even a whole lot of podcasts, because I'm, the day job for me is film and video and writing. And so all of those things, like trying to sit down and come up with words of my own or try to edit audio on my own doesn't allow me to listen to a whole lot of other audio content.
Are you, when it comes to books, I mean, are you like the old fashioned turn the page kind, or what do you think of like, with like the, iPad, reading a book on an iPad or a Nook? A lot of people are kind of up in arms about that.
To me, the difference, cause I've got a Kindle and I've got way too many books at home. And for me, the criteria is if it's something I'm going to want to have on my shelf 10 years from now, because I'm still going to be loaning it to people, I'll buy the paper copy. But if it's something I'm going to read once and forget about, I'll get the Kindle and save the room in my place.
It just seems so much more convenient to have it in a digital format versus the paper. But there is something nice about turning pages or the smell of a book,
Yeah, and I always feel bad for the poor bastards who bring their Kindles on the plane and they make them turn them off, and I'm sitting there like reading a book, and it's just like, I that's one of the biggest advantages. Like, as soon as they make it so that I can use my Kindle during takeoff, I probably won't carry paper books with me on planes anymore.
Yeah. Speaking of podcasts, you brought up that you don't listen to a whole lot of podcasts, but Full of Sith, you do the Full of Sith podcast with a good mutual friend of ours, Mike Pilot.
Yeah.
And I was really excited, with the release of that podcast. How did that, I mean, I know you had a lot to even do with that in the beginning and kind of how that started. And I mean, share your story a little bit about doing that podcast.
For a long time, I was doing Geek Show with Carrie and Jimmy and those guys, because I was filming it for Comcast. And so I kind of got my itch for podcasting out with those guys, and sort of quickly became the Star Wars expert, because I'm like the Star Wars guy. And I was doing a lot of Star Wars journalism and going out to the events that Lucasfilm was holding and stuff. And then the Comcast deal fell through with Geek Show. And so
Geek Show used to be on Comcast.
Yeah, we used to for 3 or 4 years.
I didn't even know that. On
my YouTube channel, actually, are most of the back episodes.
I'll have to go check that out
on film. Yeah, no, they're really good. Geek Show's a great show, and
it is. Yeah,
when the Comcast thing sort of stopped working out, then we kind of went our different ways. And when they announced that there was going to be new Star Wars movies, I got about 15 invitations to be on like 15 different Star Wars podcasts in a week. And it got to the point where I was thinking either I need to do my own so that I'm not fielding these requests all the time, or I need to be a lot pickier about which ones I'm doing. And so I called up Mike and asked if he'd be interested, because I know that he's a big Star Wars fan, and he's like, a titan of podcasting and knows how to do it and has more patience for the technical side of it than I do. And he was on board immediately. In fact, he told me like that he gets people asking him to do podcasts with him all the time. And that just like a week before I'd asked him, he said about the only person that could convince him to get onto a podcast, another one outside of what he's already doing with like obviously Oblivious and Mediocre Show, was if I called him up randomly and said, let's do a Star Wars podcast. And that worked out. And we started in January, and we've had some really fantastic guests on just talking about Star Wars. Like the thing I love about Star Wars is that even if you're not the biggest fan, like everybody has an experience with it. And just talking to people about what that experience is and what it's done for them or not done for them, or how they, people have met people.
Who have you had on the show? Who's been on the show?
The last episode that we recorded with a guest, we had actually Billy Dee Williams' son, Corey, who was his stunt double in Return of the Jedi.
Wow.
We had the screenwriter of Pacific Rim, which is coming out pretty soon, and he talked about how the Rancor in Return of the Jedi, like, inspired him into the whole kaiju thing, and that's where Pacific Rim comes from. And we've had a whole bunch of the voice talent from the Clone Wars cartoon. We've had a bunch of well-known like geek journalists like Brian Truitt from USA Today, and some guys from like Newsarama, and just a bunch of people.
And didn't you guys fly out to San Francisco or go out to San Francisco to the, the Obi-Wan Ranch?
We went to Rancho Obi-Wan, actually.
Yeah.
Mike and I, and we've got a third co-host, Concetta Parker, and she actually is sort of the publicist for Rancho Obi-Wan, which is like the biggest private museum of Star Wars memorabilia in the world.
Was that your first time there?
It was my second time, actually, but it was Mike's first time, which was quite a thing to see.
Watching it through his eyes, that was quite awesome. It was
really, because Mike's a little older than me, and he experienced Star Wars at a little later date for the first time than I did, obviously, and watching a lot of some of it for me is like I was 3 when Return of the Jedi came out, so all the merchandise and all the memorabilia and all the stuff that they produced before then for me doesn't have the nostalgia. It's more like an archaeologist going into a dig and saying, wow, this is what dinosaur bones looked like. But for Mike, this was stuff that was very visceral from his childhood, and so it was really interesting to see the two perspectives, mine versus his, in that. But it was great. We went to that, and then the series, what turned out to be the series finale screening of Clone Wars at ILM, which was a really sort of bittersweet experience. But it was amazing. If anybody ever has the opportunity to see a film screening at ILM, they have to take it. It's like just the best screen and the best sound and the best everything in the world. So how do I put this into words? What is your all-time favorite thing about Star Wars? Why has Star Wars hooked you in so much? When I was a kid, it was like total escapism. Like I had a really terrible relationship with my dad, and like abusively terrible. And Star Wars was that escape for me that like I could.
Well, there was nothing like it at the time.
Yeah, well, there was nothing like it for one, but I could go to this other world where the good guys always win, and even the bad guys turn into good guys. Mm-hmm. The relationship between Luke and his father at the end of Return of the Jedi, where he realizes that he's been screwing up and he's been a totally evil person. Like as an 8-year-old, that meant a lot to me. Hoping that maybe my dad will straighten that up and on his deathbed realize that he was a bad guy all these years, stuff like that. And that's kind of, so as a Star Wars fan, I've sort of been carried through by all those feelings of escape and fantasy and warmth and comfort that they provided to me through a rough childhood. And, that's why, it could have been anything almost, but it happened to be Star Wars. It could have been Disney movies. It could have been Star Trek. It could have been comic books, but Star Wars was it.
And how many episodes have you done full of Sith? You've done probably 20, 30 of them, haven't you, by now?
I think we're getting, we've done 28 regular episodes and probably 10 special releases.
Okay.
So yeah, we're getting up close to 40.
Because I know when you started it was going to be kind of one of those things, a couple times a month or something like that. I remember hearing, but you guys have really taken off, and it's kept you pretty busy.
Yeah, no, we've been shooting for at least one a week.
Yeah. And how does that work out with you here in Salt Lake, him out near Philadelphia, and
Concetta's in California?
I mean, you guys just all team up on Skype, right?
Yeah, we do. And Mike is like the king of making Skype sound like it's not Skype.
See, and I have not mastered that yet. I mean, that is a tough thing to use. I don't know what he does.
Me neither.
I've tried.
I think he's got like 5 different computers set up, and he's got one with a Skype connection coming in this way, and then patched that into a board. And I don't know. It's magic.
Yeah. And fullofsith.com is where people can find that, and iTunes. And I mean, it's a great podcast, like I mentioned. Big Shiny Robot, though. You started that, right? You started the website. Share that story. I mean, how long has that been going for you?
Big Shiny Robot, we just had our 5th anniversary back in February. And our kind of goal with that, it was me and a guy named Lucas Ackley. And Lucas, he works for Skull Candy now.
Okay.
Doing like their web development and stuff. But back when I met him, he was doing freelance web design. His wife is a fantastic artist too, and she's done a lot of design work. Are
they here in Salt Lake area?
Yeah. She's got stuff in galleries. Yeah. She's got stuff in galleries all over the place, and her painting is really good. But him and we hired him to do the website actually for Killer at Large. And as we were communicating back and forth, about this website we were building, we were sharing links to like geeky content and stuff on the internet. And, I was blogging for Huffington Post at the time, and he said, we should probably make this more public. And I was like, well, how? And he's like, well, we could put together a website. I've been parking for years this domain called Big Shiny Robot. Do you think we could make something like that work? And, within a month we were posting and I've written almost 2,000 pieces for that site.
Wow.
Since it started. And we just do geek news and reviews and that kind of stuff. And it turned into,
isn't it a podcast form as well, or no?
Yeah. Lucas and, some of the other robots do, the Big Shiny podcast. They go once a month and kind of do like, video games and pop culture and that kind of stuff. And, there's, we did we did that kind of turned into, back when In This Week was,
that's what I used to write for In. Right?
Yeah. In kind of contacted me and said, hey, we love this Big Shiny Robot thing. Would you do a column for us? And, so I was doing a column there just for free. Mm-hmm. And City Weekly, after Big Shiny Robot won a Best of award for best local blog, offered to start paying me to write for them. Mm-hmm. And so I bid in a due, and they ended up kind of going under anyway. And now they're a junk mailer, which I'm pretty sad about. But
yeah, it was a good magazine if I remember correctly.
There were
like, well, maybe parts
of a good magazine.
Yeah.
But, however the content worked out, like the people who worked there were great. Mm. So Big Shiny Robot kind of really early on for a few years now, probably a year into Big Shiny Robot, has been sort of the website and my Big Shiny Robot branded column in the local print area, here between In and then City Weekly.
And with doing all of these projects, I mean, what motivates you? How do you not just throw the towel in? I mean, so quickly they just get overwhelmed and they just say, screw it all. What motivates you to keep doing it?
I feel like I've got to keep my commitments. I don't know. Like
just the type of person you are.
Yeah. Just the type of person I am. Getting paid helps, but, maybe I'm, I'm not sure. Maybe it's just, maybe in the back of my head, it's like the more of the stuff I do, maybe the more books I'll sell or something. I don't know. It's just writing and communicating to people is something I really enjoy.
And you got to do what you enjoy.
Yeah. For me, it's about communicating passion, really. Like, with Full of Sith, it's all about me trying to communicate to people the passion that they could find, not just in Star Wars, but in anything. And with my column in City Weekly, a lot of it is like, hey guys, listen, there's this part of this community that's going on, and there's this comic book or that thing that you should check out, and this is why you should really enjoy it. I think too much, especially in some of the local subcultures here, there's been this de-emphasis on joy and passion, where, the best praise they can give something is meh, but it's cool to be excited and passionate about stuff. And
it shows through your writing. I mean, you could sense that you're excited to write what you do, and you can feel it.
I hope so. I like community. I don't think there's enough of that in the world or even the city that it's okay to like enjoy things or be happy about them, or, everything media wise so often seems so negative, or that it's poo-pooing something, or, a critique of something. And sometimes it's okay to just say, hey, what was awesome? This, check it out.
And you do the Big Shiny Geek Show pub quiz night.
Yeah.
You talk about that, especially since, with Salt Lake listeners that haven't had a chance. I've been to a couple. So, I would like to come out to more, but.
So Shannon Barneson from Geek Show, again, he and we got together, and we're just about to have our third anniversary of doing pub quiz. We're at Lucky 13 every Wednesday night at 8. I'd say show up at 8 or earlier. It fills up fast. Yeah. And we do 8 rounds of general trivia, and we just have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. We started going to the trivia night at the Republican, which has a great trivia night on Monday nights. Mm-hmm. But as a responsible adult who has to get up early, at the point where it doesn't start till 10 or 11, it's just
And how did you luck out with such an awesome place like Lucky 13? I mean, come on, the best burgers.
Yeah.
You know, the nicest people work there. How did you luck out with that?
You know, back when we started, they were looking for ways to bring people into the bar because they couldn't get anybody in there.
Oh, jeez.
And so it's been weird that they attribute part of their success to us, but it's like, you know, we can't even get tables when we go in there anymore because it's so busy all the time.
Yeah, it is.
It's their success has everything to do with how good their food is and how great the atmosphere and the people are. You know, we just happen to luck out and get in at a time when people didn't know about it. Now that they know about it, the guys there are, maybe they're just placating us by saying that we had something to do with it. But
you might have a little. You got to take, give yourself a little pat on the back,
You know, I mean, we were bringing in hundreds of people a week that probably wouldn't ordinarily come in and tell people about it. But now it seems like that's small in comparison to the people who enjoy that place. And it's such a great place. I eat far too many burgers there.
So did you grow up here in Salt Lake then, or where did you grow up?
No, you know, I like most Utahns. Originally, I'm from California.
Okay.
Moved here when I was 13 to Utah County and hated every minute of it and started working up here.
Utah County moved there myself from California, so we got a similar story.
Yeah. And I started working up here and I was living down there and I was commuting on tracks and the bus for a long time, and I've been up here 4 or 5 years now, and I've been working up here for 6 or 7, maybe closer to 10. And
but you don't live in Utah County now, right?
No, I live over by Liberty Park.
Okay,
and I love that. I moved up here 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay,
and I would not want to live anywhere else. You know, I've been to so many cities all over the world. And there's just not one that feels like Salt Lake, and it's small enough that it feels comfortable, but it's big enough to have all the amenities of a big city. And I don't feel uncomfortable here at all. You know, I don't feel like my safety's at risk. I don't feel like my kids are going to have a bad time growing up here. You know, it's and the if I'm going to pick a place in Utah that kind of matches more of my attitude about life and politics and things like that, I mean, Salt Lake's pretty much the only place that does that.
So I'm always curious, what people like about Salt Lake, and especially people bringing on the podcast or the show. What do you like about Salt Lake? I mean, you said it the best right there. It's a nice city. It's clean. It's good to raise your kids. And if you could change a couple things though, I mean, would there be anything you would like to see different about Salt Lake? I mean, I always hear the liquor laws and stuff like that.
The liquor laws, obviously. One thing I'm actually working on, the city is actually having me work on a documentary for them about the history of rail in the city.
Really?
And we used to have like 150 miles of streetcars in the city, and we tore them all up by the 40s. And I'd like to see that come back. I'd like, especially going to Paris and not having to walk more than a block to hit a metro stop and be able to get anywhere in the city. I think if we could invest in that kind of infrastructure so that we wouldn't have to do anything
I'd love cars. To ditch my car and
so putting 160 miles of streetcar track back in the city would be one thing I would change. I would love to see that.
But people are, they're complaining about that Sugar House streetcar thing, which I don't really understand why they're complaining about it. It seems like a great thing, but maybe I don't know all the details.
It's a really short-sighted thing to complain about, I think. And I don't want to talk for the people who are upset about it because I don't know for sure, but I think that they think that if they go through the construction of having the streetcar go down their street, that their business isn't going to survive the construction period.
Kind of like what happened to downtown when all the construction was here.
And or North Temple.
Yeah.
But North Temple only lost something like 2 businesses over the course of the airport tracks going in.
Uh-huh.
But 11th East has, that was the big thing. We've got the Sugar House streetcar that's going in from the track station all the way up to like the Granite Furniture Building and stuff. And they were trying to figure out if they should take it up 11th East or up 21st South the rest of the way. And part of the reason that the city planners didn't want to take it up 21st South is because that would need a much bigger sort of car than what they're planning in Sugar House. They wanted like a neighborhood streetcar that's going 10, 15 miles an hour, which would fit much better going right up to Westminster and relieve some of that traffic in those areas as opposed to, a big commuter kind of style tracks train going up 21st South, and they just didn't mix. And so some of the people, I just maybe don't think they understood what was going on.
You see, and I'm not following the complete story of it.
Yeah.
I just, I'd see the protesters out on the corner and I'd be like, man, this is a great thing. You would think, the streetcar coming through Sugar House.
No, I think it will be. I really do think it will be. I can't wait for the streetcar to open later this year.
And you said you're working on a documentary
Yeah, we're doing
for Salt Lake or something? Or do you care to share anything about that?
Yeah,
or?
no, yeah, we're doing a half-hour sort of PBS Ken Burns style. Myself and Elias Pate, the guy I work with, we've been doing film and documentary together since we were like 13. Mm-hmm. And him and I, we started a business where actually we've got an office over at the Pickle Company.
Oh, nice.
Building. And we started that business years and years and years ago, and sort of the city started appropriating more and more of our time to do all of their video outreach projects. And we actually won a couple of Telly Awards for history pieces that we put together for the city that are on like the mayor's YouTube page. And they kind of saw those and said, well, we'd really like to tell this story about the streetcar. Do you guys think that that's something you could do? And hopefully it'll be done by this year, like a half-hour, 45-minute piece about how the streetcars went in, why they came out, what happened in between, and why they're trying to put them back in now. And there's really fascinating stuff, like I had no idea, that E.H. Harriman, the guy who ran Butch and Sundance out of the country, he's the one who built Charlie Square.
Wow.
And he bought up all the streetcars to build this rail empire and built Charlie Square there. And then he ended up dying. And,
learning about the history of Salt Lake is fascinating.
Yeah. Oh, it really is. It really is. He ended up dying. They bought out his shares and then they just started selling it off or paving over the streetcar lines. And actually, it was the estate tax on his death that paid for the Capitol building.
Wow.
So he died, and the taxes they took was a couple of $100,000 on his fortune, and that's what they built the Capitol with.
That's really cool. I'll have to keep my eyes open for the documentary.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what else, what other plans you got for the summer? Anything you're excited about this summer, or is it just more writing, more filmmaking and stuff like that? Or
a lot more writing and filmmaking is in my direct future. I've got a couple of conventions I'm heading out to, and hopefully by the end of the year I'll have another book out.
And are you doing anything with the Salt Lake Comic-Con? Are you helping out with that kind of?
I've been consulting a little bit. I'm hoping to get a little bit more involved, but I was one of those first phone calls a lot of those guys made, and have been consulting over the weeks, but nothing official.
You're pretty excited for that Salt Lake's going to finally have a Comic-Con?
That's something I've talked a lot about in my City Weekly column over the years, is that I think Salt Lake could have one, but instead we've kind of got this splintering of tiny cons spread out over the valley. So, we've got like Anime Bonsai and Anime Salt Lake and the Steampunk Steam Fest thing, and we've got there was a couple of shows down in Utah County that people were doing comics wise that no one went to. And Media One had their Geeks Expo thing, and none of it really put together everything that people look for in a Comic-Con. And so I've kind of been editorializing about that I think it would be perfect and we need to get it downtown. And I'm still sort of sad that Salt Lake Comic-Con is going to be in Sandy.
Yeah, I was kind of bummed out about that myself. Yeah.
At least it's on the tracks line.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I hopefully eventually we'll actually get a proper one downtown, and it'll be really cool and bring that culture to bear and actually have a positive impact on the economy here or something. Until then, we've got what we've got, and I'm going to enjoy it anyway.
Absolutely. Anything else you want to add, Bryan, before we close here? How people can even get in touch with you? I'll put all the links on the show notes, obviously. You're on Twitter? Yeah,
I'm on Twitter. My Twitter handle is my big shiny robot name @SwankMotron.
Okay.
And people can hit me on Facebook or Twitter.
And you have a Facebook fan page?
Yeah, it's the same as my website. It's facebook.com/Bryan Young Fiction. Yeah, I mean, I'm really easy to get a hold of, and
you're a nice guy.
Yeah, I try.
I'll admit that. So appreciate anything else. Did we think we got pretty much everything you're involved in and kind of what you're doing. We might miss something here and there, but
I'd love to hear from people who are reading the column in City Weekly and what they think about it and what kind of different stuff they'd like to see in there. I've been doing it for a couple of years now. Actually, I think I just turned over my 80th or 90th column for City Weekly, which for a weekly is a lot. And, I'd like to know if there's other stuff people want to hear about in the, our biggest alt weekly.
Probably got all the contact information right there.
Yeah, they can hit me on Twitter. My email address even is everywhere. So
yeah. Well, cool. Thanks a lot, Bryan. And, down the road, we'll have to bring you back on and catch up with you and see what you've been up to.
Oh, I'd be happy to.
Many, many thanks goes out to Bryan Young for coming on the podcast, sharing his story. Hopefully you guys enjoyed listening to that. Again, all of the links to get in touch with him are on the show notes at iamsaltlake.com/episode 79. I got his website, Facebook, Twitter. Drop him an email, get in touch, tell him you heard him on the I Am Salt Lake podcast. Really, really great individual from the Salt Lake City area. And I was really excited to sit down with him. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that conversation. A few ways you can help out the show. You can find us on iTunes, leave us a review. That really helps boost the ratings, gets us in front of more people. You can find us on Stitcher Radio. It's a really great app that you can download if you're not a fan of Apple products, or Mediocre Radio Network. You can stream us right there directly from the website at mediocreradionetwork.com. Also, there's a lot of really other great podcasts on that site as well, including the Full of Sith podcast that I talk about with Bryan in this episode. So I think that's going to about do it for another episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast. It's kind of crazy to think creeping up on my 1 year anniversary of doing this show. And thanks to everybody for your support. Thank you for your donations. Thank you for the emails. You guys are helping keep this show alive. And I cannot thank you guys enough. So until next time, thank you for listening to another episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast.